Hey, what's going on everybody? How's it going? How y'all doing today? Welcome back. So for this video, we're talking about the very first season of Sacred Games. And this particular show was recommended to me on more than one occasion, and season 2 is coming out, so I figured I would give it a watch. And speaking of that, season 2 just got released a little bit sooner than I anticipated, so I'm gonna try and power through this review so I can get started on watching that. If you're new to the show, I would recommend doing what I did for Game of Thrones, and that is probably rewatching the first episode more than once. Because it's a fairly complex show, there's a lot of different parties, and it might be hard to kind of pick up on exactly who everybody is whenever, you know, a name gets said. But either way, the basic plot of the show, there's two different storylines going on. There's one that's going on in current times, and the current timeline focuses on a police officer in India, and he gets a random phone call from a gangster who's been missing for several years. And this gangster just so happens to call with a warning. He says in about 25 days, Mumbai will be gone. And he just speaks very vaguely about some things that are soon to come, and he also happens to know this officer's father, which is a whole other thing. And then the other timeline focuses way in the past when this gangster was kind of coming up and how he kind of rose to power. So in a sense, they're trying to give it kind of the Godfather 2 treatment, which I thought was kind of cool. But also in the present timeline, the main character, he's dealing with a very corrupt police force apparently. So he's trying to deal with that while also investigating the threat that this gangster posed, and also he's dealing with another person who works in a different department. So it's like I said, there's a lot going on, there's a whole lot of ins and outs, and you actually really do have to pay attention every episode. And if you couldn't already tell, I really enjoyed the first season of this show, because I'm getting ready to watch the second season, like right now. The best thing about the show for sure is probably the pace of the storytelling, because it's really hard to juggle two different storylines, especially when they're doing it in the way that this show is doing it, because I drew a comparison to Godfather Part 2, but I think more so a better comparison would be you're kind of watching Breaking Bad while simultaneously watching Better Call Saul, and it's like combined into one show. Because there's certain characters that the officer is dealing with in the present, meanwhile in the other storyline you're seeing the gangster come up, and some of those characters are slowly starting to come into fruition. So you're ever so slowly like witnessing this kind of convergence, and you're just waiting for everything to come together, just to fall into place. And as far as the technical aspects, I liked a lot of the music choices that they had. I could have done with a little bit less slow motion, but that's kind of a nitpick at this point. One noticeable negative that I'll say about the show is that this whole season, it didn't feel like a complete story necessarily. But don't get me wrong, there are a lot of T's that get crossed and I's that get dotted throughout most of the show. However, the ending, there's a lot of unanswered questions to me. And I don't have a problem with ambiguous endings necessarily, but I feel like there should have been more of a feeling of completeness by the end of this first season. But at the same token, still having a bunch of mysteries in it, it's pretty cocky. I'll give the show some points for being super confident. But I liked all the characters they presented. I thought they didn't spend too much time on anybody to the point where it got annoying. And the show does do a good job of getting you to sympathize with the gangster character, despite, you know, he's done a lot of horrible shit. And I like the way the show kind of emphasized this idea of fatherhood and how that can change from person to person. And as far as the context of the show, I like the realism that they made, like, you know, as far as like building up these characters and who's safe and who's not. And there was a couple reveals in the show that were a little bit too set up, or maybe a little bit too obvious, that they weren't as surprising as they could have been. But it also didn't take away from the creativity of the writing, and I really enjoyed the last episode, like where it ended on. But anyway, guys, I think you can pick up what I'm laying down. I really liked the show, and I liked the whole story that it's set up thus far. It was a little bit cocky in its execution, but at the same token, I really enjoyed the way the story is being told, especially with the differing storylines. So I think for a score on this first season, I think I'm gonna give it an 8.6 out of 10. I definitely recommend it. The dub isn't that great, so I watched most of the show in subtitles, as I normally do, but it's a really good crime mafia show, and it's nice to see it coming from a different country, so you're seeing maybe a different perspective on it, and hopefully season 2 lives up to the hype. But anyway, guys, those are my thoughts. What are your thoughts? Have you seen the show? Have you heard of it? Are you excited for season 2? Hop in the comments, let me know what's up. Other than that, if you like this review, give me a like, subscribe, share, hit the bell, do all that other YouTubey type of shit. And until I do my review of season 2, I will catch you guys next time.